As we continue to react to Suella Braverman's new anti-illegal migration bill, we also have responses from other politicians and other public figures, including Nigel Farage. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Let's talk about Suella's bill. So yesterday we covered on the channel the basics that we know about this anti-illegal migration bill. It looks good. It says the right things. I'll believe it when I see it. We know that. But Nigel Farage also had his reaction. I'm going to put him on the channel and the video that he has done for us. It is interesting because he points out the same problem that I mentioned yesterday. But he goes through the details and he explains the biggest flaw of this bill that hasn't really been covered unless they, for once, Team Suella and the government know what they're doing. And we're going to find out more about how much they're going to push the boundaries of international law. Otherwise, it is too good to be true because we're still tied to certain conventions and treaties. Let's go to Nigel Farage.
So in a way, the government are now finally saying the right thing. Cracking down on the criminal gangs, as Labour advocate, is useless. Why? Because they can make millions of euros a week, particularly at the height of the summer. You can put them all in prison, more will come because the financial rewards are just that great. You've got to make it clear to people it's not worth paying 5,000 euros to a trafficker because as soon as you arrive, you're going to be deported.
Yeah.
Well, it all sounds tremendous. But already the government are admitting that they're pushing the limits of international law. What do they mean by that? Well, firstly, we're signed up to a whole series of United Nations declarations going right back to 1951. That's a long time ago. You know, it's 70 years ago. And I've got to tell you, that world was very, very different. We were then talking about a post-war world where terrible things had happened. Awful atrocities had been committed. No one foresaw back then international criminal gangs trafficking lots of young men into the United Kingdom. So that's outdated. But the bigger problem is we are signed up by treaty to the European Convention on Human Rights with its associated court in Strasbourg. Now Sunak and Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary, today will tell us there's a Strasbourg break. It's only a week after we had the Stormont break and after David Cameron talked about an emergency break. There's a break for everything. That's sort of just civil service language. Believe me, folks, it means nothing. What nobody has said thus far is this. Number one, the judges in Strasbourg won't like any of this. But number two, what about British judges? British judges are going to revert to an international treaty. They'll say we have an obligation under international law to obey what we signed up to. Yep. This isn't going to work. And let me tell you something, the government already know it isn't going to work. What they're saying is, we're on your side. But they've done it before, again and again and again. Priti Patel did it as Home Secretary. Boris Johnson even said, if you come here illegally, you won't be allowed to stay. David Cameron said, if you come here illegally, you won't be allowed to stay. So Sunak and Braverman are saying what the Tories have been saying for years. The difference is, and I'll grant them this, it's much tougher legislation, good, but it isn't going to work because of our commitment to ECHR. The only way we solve this is we complete Brexit. Brexit was about getting our sovereignty back.
Yep.
If a government in a piece of legislation already admit it might not work because of a foreign court, well, that means we're not a sovereign country, we're not a sovereign nation. The language is better, but we have to leave ECHR or we'll never, ever solve this problem.
Absolutely, spot on. It is interesting, a couple of things that Nigel said which were true was, one, these treaties, declarations and conventions that we've signed up to, a lot of them are now out of date because they were done at a certain time throughout history, especially since the current world order since the 40s, and shouldn't really apply to the current climate when it comes to economic migration and everything else happening geopolitically around the world. And secondly, and that's why people like me have been skeptical since yesterday when we announced the last couple of days when we mentioned about this bill. It is not just randomly us sitting here and moaning and complaining about everything. Because some people, who, especially Tory tribalists, who would say, "Oh, why can't you just support it? Why are you just moaning about everything?" It's not really because of that. It's just objective analysis. I'm being completely skeptical because it's not really just not to be disappointed when it doesn't work out. One, as Nigel said, we've seen it before. Secondly, even the current version, there are already flaws. Now, I'm hoping that it works. I want it to work. But when I say that, I'll believe it when I see it, it's not necessarily saying, well, they're lying to us. They could be. But the problem is that they haven't really covered their own back. We're still tied to all these international treaties. Now, Suella Braverman sounds very confident that she says that she knows what she's doing. So I can have hope. I can go with, okay, I'll give you that. I'm going to sit here and wait. But I can still sit here and analyze the bill. I can still sit here and analyze the problem of the past. Not just the promises. I'm not talking about the politics of it. I'm actually talking about legislations. I'm talking about policies that haven't worked. This is the only reason we're doing this. It's not really for some sort of show just to moan and complain and cry and have meltdowns over every policy that Tory government come up with. But we're going to see. We're going to hope that it's going to work. But again, we have to be quite balanced about what could happen. I'm not going to go full on pessimistic either, because ideally you want it to work and you see how it's going to affect the next general election. Let me know your thoughts actually in the comment section. Tell me, those of you, especially those of you who actually do believe that this could work, because I know a lot of people are already skeptical. If you think that this could actually work out, leave a comment, give me the reason of your thinking. My Tousi, and we are the media.